flower friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Field and Garden Podcast. It is your friend in flowers, Lisa Mason Ziegler. And friend, I'm glad you've decided to drop in. So friends, I want to just remind you that this podcast is made possible by thegardenersworkshop.com. That is home base to everything that we do. We have a fully stocked online library of courses, our garden shop that only offers the same tools, seeds, supplies, and my resources, the same stuff that I use, as well as you can connect with our sister podcast, Seed Talk, as well as so many other free resources, videos and blogs, just everything you need to grow cut flowers, whether it is for profit or pleasure, my friend. So today's topic is, so often I kind of imagine topics that I'm facing today, but maybe in a different arena, right? And I think, you know what, how awesome would it have been when I started flower farming to apply some of these lessons that I have learned. And so that has led us today, friends, to the topic that we're going to talk about, random tips or a real roadmap. And man, goodness, y'all, I am speaking to myself once again this morning. It's so easy to fall in. So I know that as when I'm trying to start something new, add a different arm to our business, or just to start doing something that we've never done before, that it's so easy, and particularly at flower farming, because there's so much out there, we often start gathering just tons of information. How many times have I saved stuff? Who knows where it is now? Who knows if it'll ever be looked at again? It's almost like how people used to say that we have so many images buried in our phone to never be seen again. It's the same, right? But scattered tips can just drive us to be even more confused than we are now. At least I know that's what it does to me. So I want this episode for you to see the value in learning and moving forward in the right order. So with so much information available, I mean, has it ever been louder than it is today? There is education available everywhere. Social media, podcasts, YouTube, books, workshops, and even advice from fellow growers or even growers that maybe you just watch from afar. And that is all wonderful. But it just can leave us in such a state of overwhelm and uncertainty and what applies to them. You know, that's a frequent question that we get here at the Gardener's Workshop. It's like, I was listening to Lisa talk about whatever, and I was wondering, will that work in my area for my garden? And you know, if you've never used any of our resources or haven't followed us along with us for very long, I am the teacher that really does try super hard to not give you fish, friend, but to teach you how to fish, meaning how you figure it out for your garden. That's the hinge, that's what everything works from. And once you kind of figure out what you have to look at to figure out whatever it is to apply it to your garden, you are golden. You can figure out pretty much anything. So that's what I want to help you with, is let's take a look at tips that are helpful, but tips are not the same as having a roadmap. Can you imagine somebody trying to tell you how to get, for me, I live in Virginia. Let's just say that somebody is going to tell me how to get to upstate New York. And they don't tell you which road to get on or which way to head. They just tell you about some of the landmarks that are along the journey. But you have no clue which exit to get on, what road to get on, which direction to go in. Literally, that's the difference between having a pile of tips and having an actual roadmap. And I guess that's kind of become my focus in my whole career as a teacher, is to help people. You know, my dyslexia tends to make me very anxious about not understanding the process or not understanding, okay, how do we do that? It's like, okay, I see the goal. I see New York. I see that's where I got to go, but how do I get there? So I pay special attention to that, I guess. But I, in fact, think that's everybody's way to success, is having a roadmap that you can follow. So let's talk about some different areas. So there's blessings and there's burdens of too much information. Oh my goodness, y'all. I have said more than once that I feel like a big part of me being able to survive and make it through my early years of flower farming to be a success was because there wasn't so much noise. I mean, we barely had internet, much less nobody had a smartphone or even a laptop to go to at that point. And I think that that was the blessing for me. And then there's the burden of all that information we're saving, right? So there is so much more flower farming information available today than there has ever been before. And some of that can be really encouraging, but it can also make new growers feel like they should be doing, this is what happened to me, that everything, I should be trying it all. I should be doing everything at once. I should be planting perennials, annuals. I should have tunnels. I should be doing subscriptions. I should be selling to florists. Maybe I should be doing weddings. But the farmer's market looks like a great thing to do. And then, of course, you have to learn how to seed start. You have to be putting compost in your soil. Should I be growing bulbs? What do I do about irrigation? And friends, I could go on like that for an hour. And that's what happens when there is no clarity. You get so much information that it really does not mean anything to you. It just literally, I look at it like, this is how I used to explain to somebody. People would say, oh my gosh, it must be so great training new employees. And it is great. However, as the trainer, if that person that's the trainer, they really get no work done, because they literally, I look at it like I had a 20-foot rope attached to my back of my shorts, and I was just piling more stuff on that I had to pull around the farm. And that is exactly what stacking information does. You feel like you're dragging a tail that weighs so many tons that you're never going to get anywhere. You just literally spin your wheels. Where else, even though I didn't have the internet to face, when I would come home from a conference, where you see and you talk to so many people that are doing a lot of stuff that you don't do, and you're thinking it's the very same situation as all the noise on the internet. You question, should I do that? Maybe I'm doing that wrong. You just pile it on. It is so hard to stay on track and to stay on point for your flower farm and what your pathway is and your goal. And I mean, I get it. And I talk about this all the time because let me tell you something, friends, you never get over that. Every step of your business, in every piece of the business of the Gardener's Workshop, we face the same stuff over and over and over again. So you really have to bone up on how you're going to focus. What are the steps, the roadmap that you're going to take, which I'm going to give you a measuring stick, perhaps, to go through what you may be facing here in just a moment. And the other thing that I found is that random tips are more expensive, because a tip may be a perfectly good but wrong for your stage of where you are, for whether it's your scale, the climate you live in, like looking at somebody that trying to do something that this really happens when people want to plant at the wrong time, when they haven't figured out the basic step of when you're supposed to plant different families or groups of flowers for your farm. They just follow somebody else that's in a completely different region, climate. Maybe they're selling to a different customer base, or something that we all face right now. There are so many people that either have, the pendulum swings far. There are those empty nesters that may have excessive funding available to them to be able to just buy stuff and try it and buy stuff and try it. And then there's the rest of the free world that is doing it on a bootstrap shoestring budget. You know, you can't do what those, and I'm not saying what they're doing is right because I don't believe it is, but you just compare yourself to that and beat yourself up. So it can also lead to buying many varieties, investing in supplies too soon. You know, I often say to people that want to buy, I mean, I hear this a lot, people that have not even farmed yet, or maybe they've been farming for not even a full season or just one season. They're ready to buy a tractor and they're ready to buy a structure, and they still have no clue what they need. What a expense to spend to only find out that you have spent money on the wrong thing. Something that I fell victim to is adding complicated crops before I mastered farming with annuals, which is that's the entry level for everybody, y'all. That's where you practice. That's where you learn. It's the least expensive with, in fact, the most potential return. Or you're chasing somebody else's business model. That was especially true for me when I would come home from a conference and I'm listening to some speaker talk about how they've had fantastic, great results doing it this way, but I'm doing this way, selling to somebody else. And I start thinking, maybe I should do that. It is so hard, y'all. The wrong good idea at the wrong time will cost you so much money, time, and confidence. And for me, that was, I jumped ahead and started growing tulips and lilies long before I should have. And not only did I crash and burn, but I wasted so much funding, y'all, because I wasn't ready. I wasn't set up. I wasn't equipped to actually do it. So let's talk about what a roadmap can do for you as a beginner cut flower farmer, or even if you are hitting the reset button. It's never too late to do this, right? So first off, having a roadmap helps you to know what to focus on first. I mean, that is so elementary. I've often said we should all still be in elementary school, and we are trying to do high school and college and graduate work when we're still in the second grade, right? It really helps you to know what to focus on first. And then more importantly, what to postpone. Some of those good ideas that you might like, oh my goodness, I want to do that. It doesn't mean you won't ever do it. It just means that you aren't ready to do it yet, right? And then what questions to ask next. Education is the root of my success. I was an avid reader, thank goodness, because that was really the only way for me to learn how to become a farmer back then. And asking questions can really direct you and focus you on what to do next. And so it doesn't mean that following a roadmap does not mean that every farm is going to look the same. Every one of our roadmaps is different. It's no different than the plan. This is why, I don't know if you've ever heard me say, I don't tell people what I'm planting when, because what I'm planting on my timing does not work for other people, for their model, for their region, for what their plan is, right? So every farm is different. And every plan is going to be different, just like everybody's seed starting and planting guide is different. That was what was behind the Big Calendar Journal, right? It guides you to find your custom planting and seed starting plan. It means that there is an order of doing things by having a roadmap. It reduces, y'all, so many mistakes. Mistakes are what deflate us, put us out of business, push us to cry, spend money, quit. The roadmap is so highly undervalued because people think, oh, I have so much right at my fingertips. Y'all. It does not work the way that that our mind leads us to believe. So I want to just run through what my suggested journey is for somebody that is starting their business or wants to hit the reset button. All right, so let's take a look at what this journey could look like for anybody starting a flower farming business with any of those different markets to sell in. It doesn't matter what market. We all start in the same place. The first one is you have to learn how to grow strong crops. You have to perfect. You're creating the product that you're selling. That is the foundation. That is the beginning, right? You have to, I'm often surprised at people that I have spoken with that are trying to sell flowers that literally absolutely have no experience, no education, and they don't know that they need education in harvesting and conditioning. It's like we have to start at the beginning, because when you start learning how to grow, it is going to open your eyes so much to why things go wrong in the rest of the process, like harvesting at the wrong stage. So you're selling old flowers on top of, you cut them at the wrong time, they're wilty, the foliage is in bad shape. I could go on and on. It all starts with step one, y'all. How to grow strong cut flower crops. It's the cusp of everything. Then you have to learn how and when to harvest, and then to how to handle and condition them properly. I'm reminded of this when we bring somebody new on board to work here at the farm, how things that I am so sensitive to, like leaving a bucket of flowers sitting in full blasting sun on a hot day. Doesn't matter if it's a wilty flower or not, that's not good for any flower. But to leave buckets sitting in the full sun while you take a break or go eat lunch, it's like that's a major problem. And the people don't do it because they don't care, they don't know is the problem. You must learn how you're going to then treat this stellar crop you're learning how to grow. And then where and how to sell them. That is a major step. How many times perhaps have we been talking to people that are like, oh my gosh, I have so many flowers, but where am I going to sell them? Well, for me, I was thinking of where I was going to sell them even before I started the seed. That's kind of what I teach people. It's like you think about where are you selling and do something about it long before you have the flowers to sell, right? You have to learn how and where to sell flowers. And people that are afraid of selling, first off, you don't need to be afraid. It's like people are already buying flowers. You don't have to convince them, first off. Secondly, you have to learn how to become a professional, because when you're a pro, it eliminates, I would say, the majority of the stressors that people that think they're afraid to sell face. So learning who and how to sell your flowers is incredible. And then when is it time to actually expand crops? When should you add on bulbs, perennials, and woodies and such? What does that timeline look like for you? And when do you increase your customer base? If you have perfected selling to florists, I think I would exhaust the florist opportunity within 2 hours of me. Because when you're selling to the same circle of people, meaning circle is not what I'm trying to say, that market florist, you're doing all the same stuff over and over just for different people, right? That's the easiest way to make more money. When do you say, okay, we need more of a end of the week outlet. What am I going to do? Knowing when it's time to tackle that is enormous. And then getting your systems down pat and knowing when it's time. I'm always surprised at the new growers that ask me about which version of QuickBooks should I get. QuickBooks is a computer-based bookkeeping system, and you know what my answer is? You really don't need QuickBooks until you're still in this at year 2 or 3. Literally a simple ledger, or if you're a spreadsheet person, all you're doing is tracking expenses and income. And you don't need anything more than that. Just do the bare basics at all levels and learn how to be a flower farmer before you go on these deep dives. The foundation, y'all, matters more than the fancy parts. And I understand wanting to get the fancy parts. I do, but you have to have control over that's what I'm learning more and more every day, y'all. If we can't control our own impulses and our mind, who could or who can? Nobody. And if you can't master that, then maybe you shouldn't be a business owner. Because being a business owner is being like a parent to like 10 kids. There's always different moving pieces, and you have to be ready and equipped in a calm, cool, collected manner to handle whatever comes next. And I was not that person when I started. I had a long journey to get here, but I want to tell you that anybody can choose to do it. And the thing that will build your confidence and lead you to success is by having a roadmap to maneuver, to make it to your destination. It's kind of like, I often think of the iceberg effect. The iceberg effect means you are only seeing the tip of the iceberg above the water level, like 10% of it. And that 10% in the cut flower world would be the beautiful flowers that you see people showing on social media, and you know, me showing those big armloads of flowers. That's the 10%. The other 90% of the iceberg, the stuff that sunk the Titanic, right, is hidden below the water surface. And it's all the business stuff that nobody wants to face. You know, when, funny enough, I was just thinking about this. When I built Flower Farming School, it's 6 different areas of what I call the foundations. I made the very first section, there's 6 sections. The very first section was the business stuff, the part that people are the most afraid of, that they least want to do, because I'm a believer in eat the ugly frog first, right? Let's face the music. Let's face this business stuff that really is quite simple when you know what to do, and get it done and out of the way, because it is going to totally build your confidence when you do that. So that's the 90% of that iceberg that's below water. It's the selling, the marketing, the problem solving. It's all of that kind of stuff that takes people out. And it's the iceberg effect. So before getting distracted by so many advanced ideas, we need to get grounded in the very basics of what we think we want to do. And I will mention here that I was a gardener gone wild for several years when I first started flower farming. Gardening really does not have much to do with flower farming, surprising enough, right? Like, yes, you're going to be growing something beautiful, which is what gardeners want to do, but the way you go about it is so very different. A grower needs the very basic information of soil prep. Building your soil is where your focus should be for a long time, until you get to where I am so fortunate to be at today with great soil. Then you've got to become a better seed starter. You have to select the right crops to grow, right? And then the timing, y'all. I hear from people every single day and see it all over all the platforms. People are planting stuff at the obvious wrong time for that family of plants for where they are. We just don't know what we don't know. And then spacing. We plant cut flower plants so much tighter because they don't need space. You're cutting the heck out of them a couple of times a week. It also aids in growing taller and straighter stems. It's just so different than a landscape or a garden, right? And then there's that whole superpower that every flower farmer should possess, and that is how to succession plant. That is the key to consistency. And then there is that harvesting and conditioning that you have to know the proper steps for every variety of flower that you're actually growing. And then you have to really have some fundamentals of marketing if you are going to sell your flowers. When you master just little baby bites from each one of those areas, that is your start to building a strong foundation that makes everything else easier. And that's what pushes you to take the next baby step, and the next baby step, and the next baby step. So, how to tell whether advice is right for you. So this is kind of my measuring stick when you think you have found exactly what you need, right? A simple filter that you can kind of sift some of all this information that you're coming up against. So here's the questions I would ask. Does this apply to my stage of business? So if you're just starting out and it's spring, early spring, and people are showing voluptuous arms of tulip blooms, does that really apply to you yet? No, it does not. You're going to file that away and bring it back when you get to that stage in your business. Does this fit my climate and my season? That goes back to seeing people growing stuff that will or won't grow where you are, but surely if it does grow where you are, I can almost promise you it has a very different planting time, which leads to different blooming times, right? And does it fit my budget and available time? That's what hit me with the tulips and the lilies. It was a big investment of money that I didn't really have, and I didn't know I was not an advanced enough grower at that point to master it, right? And the bottom line is, will this help me sell more flowers or grow better flowers right now? That's the scale. I have one of these scale people in my business, and her name is Jessie. Jessie often will listen to my great harebrained ideas, and she'll say, I'm not sure how that applies to us. And it's like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. And that's why that is in here. It's like, does this really even apply to you right now? It doesn't mean that in the future that can't be a great idea for you to consider, but right now, that's not where you're going. Am I doing this because it is truly useful, or because I saw somebody else doing it? When you see somebody else being successful, it is so hard to not want to do that, y'all. It is so hard. And I totally get it. And honestly, those things that I just offered you up is a great measuring stick for you to weigh new stuff that you are thinking about doing, especially before you start changing up what you're doing. And I know that I have laid a lot on you in this, but you want some of my regular words of encouragement, which is where I tend to be most of the time. The goal here is not to know everything about everything. The goal is to figure out where you are today in your business. It's like, if you haven't even sold a flower yet, then I would say that your goal is probably related to where would you sell flowers? Then what are you going to grow? And how are you going to grow it, right? Not, oh my gosh, those are the most beautiful tulips, I'll just order a few. I just can't tell you how that leads you down a black rabbit hole, a dark place you do not want to go, y'all. At this point of where you are right now. And the goal is to take the next right step, not just any step, the right step for where you are coming from. Disregard what everybody else is doing. You know, the grower with a simple plan and a consistent action will usually make more progress than a grower trying to follow every idea that they see online. And I know how, I have a lot of tricks on how I force myself into that pattern. And, that's one of the reasons that I believe so strongly in structured education. A good course does not just give you more information. It helps you put the pieces in order, y'all, the roadmap. And that was what was behind me creating and then developing Flower Farming School. If you're a grower who wants that kind of start to finish support to build a flower farming business, join our email list to be notified when my and Dave Dowling's course bundle sale opens. We are like the two perfect, the roadmap to get from here to there for you to follow in baby steps. It brings together my basics course and Dave's, we used to call it advanced, but that's exactly what it is. It's now called bulbs, perennials, woodies, and more. But it is the next natural step. Plus, it includes our support. And you can get on the wait list by signing up for our e-newsletter, which I'm sure that will be down in the show notes. It's everything you need to start and build your flower farming business, taught and supported by over 50 years of combined successful experience. And if you've been trying to build a flower farm, dreaming, and you're just scattered, tips is kind of where you're jumping from that lily pod to lily pad. They're scattered tips. Take heart. I totally understand why you have not made it to the end of your journey. You are not behind and you are not failing. You may simply just need a clearer pathway to follow. Start with the foundation, take the next step, and let this roadmap bring you some peace and success along that journey. So, my friends, this podcast has been brought to you by thegardenersworkshop.com, where you can learn about everything that we offer you and what we have created just for you, whether you are growing for profit or for pleasure. Until we meet again, my friends, ciao.